Hello everyone watching at home, you're with Adelaide Eternal. We're bringing you our monthly tournament. This one is Legacy. We're in round 5 at the moment. You're here with Sarven, McLinton, and next to me in the booth is Beckett, Wolfe.
G'day guys.
So we have one of our mainstay players on the right here, Socrates Stavropoulos. He's on a bug list, so bug tempo with Leovold and the like. And on the left we have Branden Videon, who is on Sneak and Show. So let's have a quick look at their deck lists. Who should we look at first?
Let's have a look at Sock. He's on a classic Delver build with Leovold. Leovold, relatively new card. He's only running a 1-of, but a lot of people have been playing bug colours since he came out, and I think he's really, really good. Tombstalker also seems to be the latest craze over Gurmag Angler, and I think we were saying in an earlier video that Tassika just gets Caracas, but otherwise it's just a basic Delver, Deathrite Shaman, Tarmogoyf list, mate, and it's got him to Turax and Dazes.
I like it. I'm always keen on the tempo list, especially with Delver. Delver gives you free wins. You land a Delver turn 1, and if you protect it all the way down to 0 life, it works wonders.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about Sock's list is really, as normal as it is, it's just nice to see some of these new cards like Tombstalker's not a new card, but latest additions, and Fatal Push is another one. 2 Fatal Pushes in the main board, getting a good show in Legacy. And speaking of show, Sarv...
Show and tell, sneak and show. So Branden is on the lists that don't involve Omniscience. So this is really all in on a sneak attack or show and tell plan. And the goal is to drop one of those 8 big beaters, Grizzlebrand or Emrakul. Emrakul obviously not as powerful when you can't cast it off Omniscience, but Omniscience is a third combo card that you need to actually combo out, whereas a simple sneak and show, a sneak attack plus Emrakul will let you basically win the game the following turn.
Brandon's got 4 spell pieces and no dazes. What do you think about that, mate?
Well, I don't like daze in sneak and show or show and tell, but I think spell pierce is really where they want to be. Whether you want to run 4 is another question, but spell pierce is a good card in this type of list.
Well, let's get down to the match, mate.
Brilliant. So, who do you think is favoured in this matchup?
It's tough. I think pre-board Sneak and Show should have a good game. It's a combo deck, and then post-board Sock gets to put in a bunch of hate cards and a bit more hand hate and get there. But look, I think if Sock can land a early Delver or Deathrite Shaman or any kind of threat, and then be able to untap with his dazes, with his forces, with a bit of mana, I think he'll be in a good spot, and that looks like a daze and a force there and
it's
a Delver.
It's a beautiful hand. Oh, it didn't have a land.
I think it was only Wasteland. Yeah.
if that Wasteland was a fetch land, that'd be beautiful. I mean, even if one of the other cards was a fetch land and you kept the Wasteland, having an opening like that is beautiful. Having some kind of island to daze back, with a proactive threat like Delver of Secrets on turn 1, followed up by Wastelanding to keep the days relevant, and having the bonus Force of Will would have been beautiful, but obviously...
Well, these are always such fun matchups to watch where the Sneak and Show player has to wonder how deep they play around days, and I think you do need to play around days, certainly when Sock's running 4. Branden doesn't know that, but I would be heavily playing around days if I was on the sneak attack.
Absolutely.
But also, you know, does Branden have enough lands to play around dazes and forces and wastes?
Well, this opening hand that he has is actually a single land, but it's a basic island, which is absolutely where he wants to be. Socrates, on the other hand, has another Delver opener, which is good, and he can scry away additional lands and put them on the bottom.
I find myself siding out Wasteland against sneak attack or Sneak and Show, because often it's a City of Traders or an Ancient Tomb, or they have basics, or they might even just have Lotus Petal, and also they might play that Ancient Tomb on the turn 2 and just have the show and tell, and your Wasteland does nothing. So I actually really don't like Wasteland. I think it's better when you're running days, so I'd keep it in, but
that's
for my list
correct.
I take it out. Yeah,
100% correct. Shaving Wasteland is very important when you're against a deck that in the sideboard runs things like Blood Moon, you know that you're in the wrong place to have Wasteland. So here is Branden is leading off with a basic island, which is perfect. He gets to ponder. He finds a combo piece. He's got Show and Tell in there. He's also got Spell Pierce, and he's got an additional land. He really needs additional lands if he wants to be able to play this game. The issue, obviously, is that second land he's going to play is a volcanic island, which will get wastelanded.
Well, we were just talking about how I side out the wastelands.
Yeah, game one.
Here, game one, you've got to be careful because does he have any other red sources besides volcanic and lotus petal?
Very good question.
He doesn't need it, mind you. I mean, you can just play Show and Tell on turn 3 off 3 basics, of course. But
absolutely,
yeah, if you're not dropping the land on the same turn you're doing the combo, I mean, geez, it might even be better to hold the land in hand if you know you're not gonna see more lands in the next turn. Maybe just hold it in hand to not play around. To play around Wasteland. What do you think about that?
The other option is obviously if you've got additional Ponders and Preordains, his hand is stacked with Ponders and Preordains, he can rush out that Volcanic Island, tap it in order to find the third mana source, and that way if his opponent doesn't have a Wasteland, he's golden, but if his opponent does have a Wasteland, he's used that land to source an additional one.
I know that in the most recent tournament we played in at the Eternal Masters, I made a few misplays where I put my land out and I just didn't need to, and it ended up getting Wasteland or Strip Mined, and I realised later that it was actually better to just hold off from your instincts, which is to just drop a land every turn, and really think about playing around Wasteland when you're on a heavy combo deck.
Very big in this format, and here's a good example. When you're on Sneak and Show, often the best option here, and same with when Miracles was actually good, you can tap the Volcanic Island, or in their case, Tundra, for example, or Volcanic Island, to cast the Preordain and keep your basic island open. This way, it allows you to keep Spell Pierce as a relevant card for the following turn and play around Wasteland.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Sarv, again, that your instincts are, well, I want to keep up my multicolour, and you see a lot of new players forget that, and then as you get better, you start going, well, I'll keep up the best lands to scare my opponent into thinking I've got something else here. But as you say, Wasteland's just more relevant at the moment.
That's it. And so here's keeping the Spell Pierce relevant. Trading Spell Pierce for 2 random cards instead of 2 random cards in your hand is really good.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested. I've never seen a list run for Spell Pierce, so I'll be interested to see how well it does. I imagine it's got a lot of targets, a lot of good targets like him, but geez, you don't want to be keeping up 1 blue and then they just drop Tarmogoyf and you're like, oh, okay.
That's right. The race is on. Once that Delver flips, you're not going to have the liberty to try and hold up mana for Spell Pierce. But here, Branden can make a choice. I believe his previous Preordain had a land, the fetch land that he got, which is what he drew this turn, and it also had a Show and Tell. So his hand should be Show and Tell now. So he's probably going to attempt to either cast Show and Tell as a bluff or actually have the Grizzlebrand or Emrakul in hand.
We were just talking about playing around Daze, and here he just doesn't care, does he? And there's Force instead of Daze?
He mulliganed
Sock's hand with Daze was mulled, wasn't it? Of course.
Yeah, that's correct. But Force pitching Brainstorm versus Force, another Force.
Oh, but Sock's Force is foil.
Okay, well, it's worth more. So Force on Force is always interesting, but here we get to see what he actually drops. So there is a Grizzlebrand, so it's pretty much game over now.
Although, again, he didn't play around Daze. I mean, we knew... Well, we didn't know, but Sock definitely could have had a Daze in the hand. That was risky. Why did Branden feel like he had to go for it that turn? Why did he think, I have to do it now, otherwise I lose?
Yeah, you can definitely wait an additional turn when you have the possibility of playing around Daze, having an additional mana, also playing around the fact that the reverse is you might be playing around your opponent having Wastelands, taking you off your mana sources. But his hand had a Brainstorm, so he could have waited. But here it's obviously the aggression is paying off.
And I know we've been talking about lands a lot, but I think, especially in a matchup like this, and especially in Legacy, those early, what you do, how you play the little what seems like a small thing in the first couple turns makes a huge difference. I noticed Branden fetched out another volcanic island, and even that decision can be the difference between a game. And I think it was correct because if his first volcanic gets wastelanded, then he's out of red sources. So he's happy to... He's not playing around 2 wastelands, but he is playing around 1 wasteland, which seems correct.
Yes.
And, just even having blue in Sock, and does Sock have the ability to get blue in days? Branden needs to be thinking about that as well. But as far as this game goes, I think it's pretty much wrapped up. I don't think, Fatal Push is a good new car, but it's not.
It's
really,
no murderous cut.
It's not really cut out to beat a Grizzlebrand, is it?
No. This game really is all done and dusted.
Well, he's got wings, doesn't he? So.
He does. It's very big.
Can't push him.
It's really an opportunity here for Socrates to play a little bit longer and get some information on Branden's deck. So finding out that he has multiple spell pierces, all of these things are useful information for the subsequent game 2 and 3.
Yeah, I guess at this point you just wait and see how many spell pieces they run, right? Because most show and tell lists are pretty similar, but I guess the real difference would be the spell pieces in Branden's list.
Yep, that's right. So there's this is obviously a additional draw 7 before attack phase going down to 3, and that's because he knows that Socrates has no cards in hand. If Socrates had a card in hand and an open fetch land, you don't know whether or not he's actually playing Check Pile, which is a 4-color deck and has red in it in addition to casting 2 lightning bolts in the deck.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they could really be anything, but...
yeah, when you see your opponents on Delver and Tarmogoyf, you're like, it could be Check Pile. So, but there's no cards in hand, so he doesn't need to play around in a thing that doesn't actually exist.
Mind you, if Grizzlebrand goes to swing, he goes up to 10, and then Sock flips, he could swing...
for exactly 10 back.
He could swing 10 back and maybe top deck some kind of enchantment or something to put... Well, there's an enchantment to put Goyf up a bit bigger, so you do have to be a little bit careful.
Oh yeah, I think the Socrates is out here is flip the Delvers, swing,
and then when Grizzlebrand goes to block, you can actually push your own Delver so that the lifelink doesn't occur.
Yeah,
and then Branden would still be on 3. That's assuming Branden holds the Grizzlebrand back to block. So holding Grizzlebrand back to block is actually a bit risky, and I think he's done the right thing by swinging here.
Yep, gaining 7 life here is very important. He's played the sneak attack because he has the ability to flash a Grizzlebrand into play from his hand in his opponent's turn to block one of those flying Delvers, I assume.
Yeah, that's right. Or an Emrakul.
Yeah, exactly.
Mind you, I'd probably just be playing the Emrakul and swinging. So yeah, it sounds like he's probably got a Grizzlebrand in hand, mate, as you say. And obviously the Legend rule means there's no point playing it
it's
in
basically
his main phase.
1 red mana, discard a card, Grizzlebrand has Vigilance.
Yeah, I'd do that. If you're going to have any creature with Vigilance...
like a lifelink
flash Vigilance, yeah, I'd probably take that one.
Yeah, so there's Grizzlebrand, Force of Will, Spell Pierces. He's pretty well set up here.
Yeah.
He's obviously just... there's an Abrupt Decay, so this is all additional information for... this is additional information for Branden. So
they'll be coming out though, right? So Abrupt Decays?
Yes. The only targets are...
Lotus Petal.
So there's a possibility that you look at that Abrupt Decay and you actually concede, so you don't reveal that you have Abrupt Decay in your hand. You know your opponent has 7 cards, and you know that they've probably got a creature because they played Sneak Attack.
Well,
so
you have 0 outs, right?
So you have 0 outs.
Here we go. Abrupt Decay and Lotus Petal, the game changer.
Go to attacks. And here we go. We're going to see a Flash Vigilance. One red mana, give target Grizzlebrand Vigilance. There we go. It's even Grizzlebrand. Is it Grizzlebrand with the same art? Okay. Yes.
And here, Sock should have kept up the Abrupt Decay. I mean, it's silly, really, but Abrupt Decaying your own Goyf there is probably better. So look, it's done anyway. So I don't know.
Much of a muchness.
Much of a muchness.
It is something you can do to prevent life gain. Yeah, just not in this game.
But yeah, sometimes it's very relevant. So
keeping in mind here that the clock has gone an additional about 5 minutes since the game was proverbially won by a Grizzlebrand, you need to decide exactly when you need a scoop. So additional information is always important. However, additional information that costs you 5 minutes on the clock is not necessarily important.
Well, to be fair to Sock though, because he flashed in the Grizzlebrand, he wasn't able to keep it alive because the sneak attack says that it sacrificed at the end of turn. So if Branden didn't have another big fatty in that grip, he had to have two big fatties in the grip.
Yes, he did.
So it's fair enough for Sock to play it out. And yeah, maybe it was just worth keeping up Abrupt Decay to decay the Goyf and then just hope
prevent 7 life gain, stop him from drawing 7 additional cards to find another fatty to play. Yeah, you're right. There are definitely outs, but I think those outs were involving Abrupt Decaying your own Tarmogoyf and hoping for your opponent not to have an additional fatty.
That's right. I mean, if you're at the stage where you're Abrupt Decaying a Lotus Petal because you've essentially given up, then I think you should be scooping anyway. So either you're giving up or you're not, really.
So after sideboard here, what do you think changes?
Well, Brandon's got 2 Vendilion clicks in his sideboard, which is really interesting. I've never seen 2 clicks. He's also got a Jace, 3 Blood Moons, which could be coming in. Obviously, Sock's deck's quite not running red, and it's a triple colour, so Blood Moon is good against it, but Sock's got...
Here's a Delver deck. But if you have a rule of thumb, for those at home, if you have Blood Moon in your sideboard, it's almost always for lands.
Yeah,
the whole thing is for the lands matchup, because when you get tempted to bring in Blood Moon against Delver decks and you're on the draw, it's basically just a dead card. They're going to kill you with a flipped Delver or a Tarmogoyf.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, if you can Blood Moon on turn 1 on the play, which Branden is on right now, a City of Traders into a Lotus Petal on a Blood Moon, it's actually surprisingly good against a Delver deck. The only issue is, what's the cost-benefits analysis where you bring in 3 cards that 80% of the time will be dead, but 20% of the time will win you the game instantly.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. It's all about whether or not you're on the play or draw. But two Pyroblasts will surely be coming in on Brandon's side. Maybe a Jace, but I don't really like Jace at all.
Grim Lava Man is good against the Grixis Delver builds because you can kill young Pyromancer. So here we go. Sneak Attack and Jace.
No, the Blood Moons are coming in, and
so
2
Blood Moon and
engineered
2 engineered.
explosives.
So I
but
do...
no Pyroblast? Surely Pyroblast
Yeah.
to counter the forces and to even just kill a Delver that's harassing you.
Yeah, I think the usual thing to think about there is... what is the difference between Spell Pierce and Pyroblast? In this matchup, you'll find that Pyroblast is actually a better card than Spell Pierce because Spell Pierce doesn't counter Abrupt Decay. It only counters the counter spells. So essentially, Pyroblast counters the counter spells as well, hard counter, and it kills the Flip Delver.
What did he take out? Sorry, sir?
I thought I saw Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, I agree with
and 2 Spell Pierces and a Sneak Attack is what he took out.
That seems fine with me. I mean... But I wouldn't be citing in as... I mean, we've already talked about the Blood Moon, but I'd definitely be putting in 2 Pyroblasts for sure.
Yep. I actually find Sneak Attack really good in this matchup because it's uncounterable once you activate it. It can be stifled, but that's neither here nor there.
On Sock's side, we've got Abrupt Decay on the side, and I think he'll be citing out Abrupt Decays and putting in his 2 Thought Seizers, putting in 2 Spell Pierces, putting in 2 Flusterstorms, and probably taking out his 2 Fatal Pushes. So he's got 2 Fatal Push, 3 Abrupt Decay main. They'll surely come out. And I think 2 Thought Seize, 2 Spell Pierce will come in. And maybe, I don't know what. Oh, and the Flusterstorm, of course.
Yep, Flusterstorm. Flusterstorm's really good in this matchup. Spell Pierce. I see Spell Pierce in the sideboard and I go, wat. Because Spell Pierce is a main deck card. Very rarely is Spell Pierce a sideboard card.
It's a good card, but it's not very impactful.
Exactly.
It doesn't
Flusterstorm is an amazing sideboard card. But Spell Pierce is very much a catch-all main deck card.
That's right.
That's in your 59th or 60th flex slot.
So we've got 6 cards to come in and 5 definite cards to come out. 1 other to come out, maybe Jace?
Well...
Or a Wasteland?
Yeah, it's I would take out... So for those who are on Wasteland decks or are thinking about playing a Wasteland deck, when you're playing a deck like Grixis Delver, it's not quite to the same degree Bug Delver. Wasteland to you is fundamentally a spell because it actually doesn't cast anything in your deck. In Bug Delver, you do get to cast Tarmogoyf. In Grixis Delver, you get to cast Young Pyromancer, but that's basically the only time you'll ever be using that mana, aside from paying for your opponent's dazes or playing around them. So there's actually 4 spell slots. If you find you're up against a deck that is really good against Wasteland, then side out all 4 Wastelands and bring in 4 really good cards, suddenly your deck is just 4 more cards of gas.
Yep, and as I said, I often side out all my 4 Wastelands, and you need to make sure that your land base can support siding out those Wastelands.
Socrates' hand he brought in Surgical Extraction, so there is an argument to bringing Surgical Extractions in against blue matchups, and the reason being you can usually hit something that is relevant or integral to their deck. So, for example, let's say that your opponent does a sneak attack, a show and tell on turn 1, and then use Surgical Extraction them. It's going to reduce the power of their deck. Furthermore, if for some reason there's a Grizzlebrand in the graveyard and you Surgical Extraction Grizzlebrand and they're on a deck that only has, say, 2 Emrakuls or 3 Emrakuls because they're running Omniscience, that's also a nice way to hamper the deck. But usually what happens with Surgical Extraction is you'll find that there's very rarely those golden targets, and what you end up doing is you cast your Delver, they Force of Will your Delver, and you go, well, I have to make this relevant, so I'll Surgical Extraction your Force of Will, take a look at your hand, and know that I no longer have to play around Force of Will for the rest of the game, and that's not ideal.
Unless, well, the issue I have with the Surgical is that it seemed to me that there were 5 really bad cards to take out and 6 really good cards to put in. So,
plus Wastelands, he could have taken out Wastelands.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the Wastelands, of course, so unless he's taken out those Wastelands, then I'm wondering what he took out. Deaththroat Shaman really good here. It looks like Brandon's hand
powerful
is
opener.
Lands and Spell Pierces, which is not good against a turn 1 Deaththroat Shaman.
Spell Pierce is not where you want to be right now. It's really just turning off him to Turak and protecting a much later down the track combo. But when your opponent has the best 1-drop in Legacy out and they're on the play, it's really worrying.
Best 1-drop besides Brainstorm, so.
Yep, so to clarify, turn 1 I want Deathrat Shaman, and turn 17 I want Brainstorm.
The best turn 1.
Yeah, the best turn 1 drop is Deathrat Shaman. It's amazing.
I'd agree, and I think Deathrat Shaman's probably the second best card in Legacy behind Brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously these bug decks get to run both, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't envisage myself playing a deck that doesn't involve both Deathrat Shaman and Brainstorm in Legacy right now.
Look, as far as the Surgical Extraction goes from before, I think it would be good if he had a bit more turn 1 hand hate. He's got 3 hymns, which is a lot, but they are getting switched off by these Spell Pierces. If Sock had more Thought Seizers...
Oh, I hate this play. Just let the hymn to Turak get counted. Don't Brainstorm in response.
So Sock's Brainstorm in response to find a Force for Pierce, but
because what do you do? Do you want to Force of Will the Pierce? So when you Brainstorm here, your question is, what am I actually looking for? A lot of the time, people see something on the stack and they go, well, I may as well Brainstorm because there's no downside, and I might find something else. I bet you this will resolve. Yeah, there you go. So the Spell Pierce resolved, and what ended up happening is a Brainstorm gets thrown away. So people think that there's no cost to doing that play, but in reality, think about it as Brainstorm is the most powerful card in your hand, and you've actually lost it as a cost to doing this play. So it might be mana efficient, it might be information efficient, but it's really costly.
I totally agree. Force of Will is fine there. It's not a blowout. It's fine to force the Pierce, but is it worth brainstorming to find that force? Because if you do have a force, then forcing the show and tell is pretty much just as good, right?
Yeah, I don't even like even if I found a Force of Will off that Brainstorm, I still wouldn't Force of Will of Spell Pierce.
Yeah,
because then you can get your Force of Will Spell Pierced off their Lotus Petal. It's so bad. It's a horrible position to be in, and your hand becomes horrible.
Yeah, like he couldn't be looking for days either because of the Pierce.
Correct.
Because of the petal, sorry.
I can see there's a reasoning to trying to find days if they didn't have the Lotus Petal out, but even then I still wouldn't do it. It's just not worth it.
Like, I'd be happy to trade him to Turek for a Pierce. Like, Brendan's already mulliganed, and him essentially works like a Thoughtseize in that sense, where it's just trading a card for a card, taking a card out of Brendan's hand. It's still picking apart Brendan's hand, and if you have Force, then it's still eating the Pierce. So you're still sort of helping win the counter battle in that sense. And I think, totally right. So play the Brainstorms late.
Absolutely. I'm happy with Brandon's trade there. He traded a Spell Pierce for both a Brainstorm and a Him to Turak. When you think about it that way, it's like, this is a really good trade for Brandon.
Well, Spell Pierce looking good in the sneak attack list, mate.
If your opponent plays Brainstorm in response and throws a card away.
But people do it. I mean, look, Brainstorm's a versatile card and it's going to be strong no matter what. I mean, as you say, it is the most powerful spell in Legacy, but even played badly, I think it's a pretty strong card, mate. It's pretty good, right?
So there's an Engineered Explosives on one. The Wasteland hit the Ancient Tomb. So here Socrates has kept in Wastelands, and you can see Branden played, a Volcanic Island and a Wasteland. Oftentimes, when you're the sneak attack player, you generally just expect that no one keeps Wastelands in against you anyway. So, so fetching for Volk is okay there.
So, regardless of whether or not Engineered is correct or incorrect to sideboard in, I'm not sure myself. But what it means for the game is that Brennan's happy to go later. He's happy to have outs for Delvers rather than have to jam because of a Delver. So what I mean by that is Sock will inevitably get a 1-drop threat out, and that will eventually, that will pressure Brennan into having to show and tell perhaps earlier than he wants to. But putting the Engineered in means Brennan doesn't have to jam show and tell, and he doesn't have to dig for show and tell combos. He can find Engineered and play Engineered and go further into the late game. He's going further into the late game where he wants to be, Self.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's a simple answer. There you go, guys. Now you know. So, okay, that's the end of that.
Yeah. So Branden is favoured in the late game here. If your opponent is doing exactly this, which is throwing away Brainstorms and having just a Deathrite Shaman out, then the later that Branden goes,
he gets to
draw lands.
Turn 15 and hardcast Emrakul, of course.
Yeah, he gets to actually cast Show and Tell or Sneak Attack with Spell Pierce backup, Force of Will backup. It's just a better position to be in. Also, he's basically baiting Socrates into not ever playing another 1-drop by keeping that Engineered Explosives out.
Well, there you go. So it sounds like Engineered was a good side in. I still think Pyroblast would have been good in, and but yeah, it's really interesting to know. So I mean, basically, it only hits Delvers and Shamans, right?
Yep. He can against Tarmogoyfs and Young Pyromancers create the Engineered Explosives for 2, but it's rare that you really want to be doing that.
Oh, and is he popping it?
Yeah,
and now in response, Shaman is eating it. Yeah,
so the
I don't
reason
like
is
popping it either.
Because he's on 16 and now 14. You can go to 8 or 6 and it's okay because your opponent doesn't have lightning bolts.
Yes. And it hurts, but as you say, it's keeping Sock from playing Delver because he could just now untap, play Delver, play Deathrite Shaman, go, and now your clock's faster anyway.
Correct. So even if not playing it that turn, you could play it 3 turns down the track, be on 8, and it's not that bad. Because you would have built up a land base and prepared yourself for a show and tell with the counter backup.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Branden, was he thinking about pondering? Maybe he was thinking about brainstorming there. What is that? He's got another Engineered.
Emrakul, Engineered Explosives, and Grizzlebrand, I think it is.
And there was one fourth card. It was a blue card. I think it might have been Brainstorm, mate.
It was a very dark card.
Force of Will's quite a dark card.
One of these. Let's see. So
And
yeah,
exactly
here's the second
that, yeah.
death right. If he deploys a second 1-drop, it'll be pretty frustrating for Branden, having had that engineered explosives doing the job of keeping it off. But it looks to me like his Socrates is cracking 2 fetches and actually casting something that costs a lot more, whether it's a
Jace?
Tarmogoyf or... No, he won't be able to afford Jace, but it could be a Tarmogoyf or it could be a delved Tombstalker.
Ah, yes, that could be. I think it will be Tombstalker coming down here. And look, as far as the engineered explosives play goes, I've been in Brandon's position, and
Sometimes you just have to pop it.
every turn I've ummed and erred about it. I usually pass, but it doesn't feel good. So I know where he's coming from. It is painful. You don't know what is in your opponent's hand, and that's where that next level of
3. Is this
reading your
Leovold?
opponent.
Oh,
Lily.
okay, Lily. Okay. Every time we see 3 colours, three different colours of 3 lands, you think Leovold. But Leovold would be an absolute beating in this matchup. But obviously, he's only running a single one, so...
And Lily's surely going to be ticking up for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, Lily is really good here. And this is why Spell Pierce on your Him to Turak doesn't matter, because if you were going to follow up with a Liliana or something like that, you've just got better cards to protect with Brainstorm into Force of Will, if you really wanted to make a Brainstorm into Force of Will play. So Liliana's really, really good here.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a world, obviously not great against the sneak attack, but I think Lily's still really good because if sneak attack swing doesn't kill, then it probably wants to go at Lily. And, unless it's Emrakul, if it's Grizzlebrand, then you might actually have a chance of clawing your way back. And if it's show and tell, the Lily can neg to sacrifice the big fatty. Of course, Grizzlebrand will be able to get 7 cards, but... Lily's down does have, there is a world in which a Lily negative to sacrifice a creature is really, really relevant.
If there was an opening for Branden, now's the opening. Playing an Ancient Tomb type land here and then casting Sneak Attack.
With Spell Pierce backup.
With Spell Pierce backup, those kind of things. This would be the opening. But unfortunately, his hand isn't really set up to do that from last we saw.
No, and it's only going to get worse with an active Lily out.
Correct. So this is 3 using a Lotus Petal as well. 3 different colours engineered explosives.
Because what does he do? Does he pop? Yeah. He's already lost card advantage from the petal. So what's he going to do? Lose another petal to kill the Lily?
It's actually a 4 for 2 because the Lily discarded 1 card. But
it might be better to untap and pop it next turn and just discard your card because. Yeah, like without the petal. Bad card. Well, if you don't have the, it looks like Ancient Tomb.
Yeah, so he's got a bad card to discard.
If you don't have petal, then you're not really going to ever be casting Sneak Attack with Spell Pierce backup, right?
And your opponent already has essentially five mana sources out, so Spell Pierce is really becoming a dead card by now.
Sock here digging for a bad card to pitch to Lily.
Just imagine if you had Brainstorm in hand.
Oh, yes. Sarv's still bitter.
I'm every time I see a bad Brainstorm.
From that turn 2, was it?
Why Brainstorm here? It's just because you're already winning. Because if you think about the why Brainstorm here, so think about you're looking for a fetch land so you can shuffle away bad cards. Don't. Just activate Lily and discard the bad card. Hold the Brainstorm for a later day.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this a lot in detail earlier, Sarven. I think people come from a modern or Highlander background where having a curve is really important and being efficient with your mana is really important. But what I was saying earlier is those first 3 turns and everything you do, every play makes so much difference. Each wasteland, what you fetch for, when you fetch, so integral. And it's less about being efficient with your mana and more about making the correct play. That's it. And just having quality cards, I think.
That's it. Like when you think to yourself, every time people want to cast Brainstorm, just ask yourself, what am I looking for? And what are the odds of drawing such a thing? The second thing to do is never Brainstorm on your opponent's turn. Unless they're thought seizing you. There's just never a good time to do that. And the third thing, these are all just rules of thumb, okay? The third thing is decide whether or not you're ahead. If you're ahead or the board state is even, don't Brainstorm.
Yeah, and if you have other things to play, I mean, a lot of people play brainstorms that are, oh, well, this is a good card, this is the best card in Legacy, so I play it and I'll be winning because I'm playing the best card in Legacy. Well, not really. I mean, if you can just play on curve, I mean, not even though I was just saying you don't really have to, but if you can just play on curve, play a 1-drop, play a 2-drop, just keep playing. Magic.
Yeah. If your hand is Deathrite Shaman, Liliana the Veil, and then big 5/5 flyer, then you've really got your turn sorted out.
And then you'll find yourself on turn 5 with, a fetch land and a brainstorm in hand, and then you're like, oh, now my hand's out of gas, now my hand's bad, now I brainstorm. Because what are you digging for? When you're in turn 1 or 2, and you've already got a keep, right? So it's a good hand, it's got a couple of lands, it's got a couple of spells, you know it's a keep. That's why you've kept it. So you know it's a good hand. So why are you brainstorming?
And you can see at that point now, we're at that point now where Socrates used a brainstorm, kept a fetch land on top, ready to shuffle away that third card that is still on top of his deck. But the question is, do I want to have to brainstorm to find a land when I actually have 6 mana sources now? So you just play the game of Magic.
Should we do really we should be doing a deck tech on brainstorm. A card tech. Just a 7-minute, explanation of brainstorm.
Give you all the rules of thumb.
Here we go. Delver, it's a bit slow, but, it's a clock and Brennan's going to feel it.
You can see how...
5 damage a turn if it flips.
You can see how the brainstorm wasn't leveraged though, because he had to play a fetch land and then cracked the fetch land and then played a Delver of Secrets. I mean, what you really want to be doing is playing Delver of Secrets with an active fetch land, because then if you don't flip it, you can shuffle it.
Well, Thoughtseize is a good flip here.
Yes.
A good flip. He gets to see the hand, and Delver's going to swing, Shaman's going to burn, and then next turn it will happen. So Sock's actually got lethal on board next turn and a Thoughtseize backup, so I reckon that's just about it. Unless show and tell. He needs a show and tell off the top, right?
That's it. So if you need show and tell off the top, why take Spell Pierce here? Don't take Spell Pierce.
Because you can pay for the Spell Pierce, yeah.
So there's options here to take the Emrakul, which shuffles 3 or 4 dead cards back into his deck and gives him less likelihood of actually drawing a show and tell. That's one marginal play. The other marginal play is taking the Grizzlebrand and allowing his opponent to draw show and tell,
but you can drain.
But you can drain to death, and so drain for 2. Yeah, so basically it's incorrect to take Spell Pierce. Right? We all established it's incorrect.
Yeah.
But you can take Emrakul, shuffle the deck, give him some bad cards, and make the odds of him drawing a sneak attack or show and tell really, really bad.
It's the little things like this where you think you're so far ahead that it doesn't matter. You're like, oh, well, I've got the Thoughtseize, I've won anyway. But then there's just one tiny out, and you might as well play around that out. And we've said it before, when you're already winning and you know you've got the game locked up, you think, what crazy world do I lose this match? And the crazy world you lose that match is top deck show and tell, which is, that's the deck, right? Runs 4 of them. Yeah. And what is the best card? Spell Pierce does nothing when you've got 6 mana.
Exactly. Sneak attack does nothing when they've only got 4 mana sources out, and have to pass a turn to you, and you kill them the following turn with a flying 3/2 and 2 more drains, and they're on 7. So the way he could have lost was essentially show and tell, and taking Spell Pierce does nothing to that. But taking Emrakul and shuffling 4 more cards back in, the odds of drawing show and tell are much lower. And his outs aren't even preordained. You get preordained, which digs you some cards deeper to try and find something, and you can't get a sneak attack. You can get a show and tell. That's possible, but again, it uses up all your mana. So basically, all of these plays involve you not ever losing to Spell Pierce. So don't take the Spell Pierce.
That's absolutely right. And I think there was a world in which show and tell in Emrakul, and then drain end of turn to take him to 5, and then untap. Drain to take him to 3. Emrakul swings, sacks everything except land and shamans and a Delver, and then he can drain and swing back for lethal. So the Emrakul isn't actually the worst thing there. So I think it's correct to take Grizzlebrand. And I mean, that's only taken us a minute to talk about, and even both our instincts there were not to do it. So I think
Yeah.
it's worth just taking your time on something like that and thinking, what is the best play?
Well, here he's bringing back in the sneak attack, which is correct in my opinion. Sneak attack's really good against counterspells. The issue is he's bringing in the third Blood Moon. So remember how we were talking about how Blood Moon is in sideboards, basically for you to win lands matchups. The issue here is he's got 3 Blood Moons and he's on the play. Is that right?
Yeah, he's on the play. So
you're
Blood
playing
Moon's
to
better on the play, but
Yeah.
3 is too many.
So, like we were saying before, if you Blood Moon turn 1, yeah, it's game over. But the problem is the odds of you Blood Mooning turn 1 are so slim, but bringing in 3 of them means you're going to draw a dead card later on. So it's a bit iffy. But the other thing is Branden could also be thinking to himself, well, I'm down, I need to get back in this game, so I need to make a risky play. And that risky play is mull into Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, Blood Moon, Force of Will, blue card.
And just to reiterate, it really is turn 1. We're not exaggerating. Turn 2 is too slow because by turn 2, Sock could go land Delver or land Deathrite Shaman, and then he's got a threat, which means the Blood Moon doesn't win the game anymore. It might, but not necessarily. And Sock's got days.
Oh, we've got the Lotus Petal into the Soul Land. Is it happening? Oh, it's show and tell. Oh.
And look, Sock had the Force anyway.
Force of Will, yeah. So this is why you're going all in on this opening turn 1, but if they have Force, it blows you out.
But Blood Moon is going to be bad, as a top deck on turn 5, whereas Show and Tell will be amazing as a top deck on turn 5.
Yeah. So you look at your hand, you go, oh, my hand is great. But then you go, here's the
surgical.
This is exactly why surgical extraction is sideboarded in. But the problem is it doesn't always happen. And because it doesn't always happen, it's very risky to sideboard in. So more than one.
If you've already forced their turn 1 Show and Tell off a City of Traders Lotus Petal, Branden is in a bad spot.
It's not good.
Because he's lost his petal and he's not going to be able to generate mana.
He can't play a land next turn. He has to wait until he gets another, say, Show and Tell. And then, which he can't do because he doesn't have any more Show and Tells in the deck. He needs to. It's not a good spot.
He's all in on Sneak Attack.
Yeah, which will never come down now unless he draws Lotus Petal as his next draw step. So otherwise, it's not going to come down.
Well, yeah. He's got 2 lands in it. I reckon he just plays the land. He can't.
Yeah, sometimes you got to suck it up.
Yeah, it's either Lotus Petal and play land and go Sneak Attack, but then you can't have Spell Pierce backup, or you suck it up and just start playing lands and hope to draw 5 lands. Ugh.
Yeah, not ideal. I think you don't play a land next turn, and depending on what you draw, if you draw Lotus Petal, it's a no-brainer. But you don't play a land next turn, and then the turn after you play a land because it gives you 2 possible draw steps to. Wait a second, what am I saying? There are no Show and Tells. There's no Show and Tells in the deck. They're all gone. They're all gone. But Socrates is on 17, so Branden is winning.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Powerful Magic players here.
So basically, Branden's locked into Sneak Attack. And,
okay, so if he identifies that his route to victory is Sneak Attack, then he needs to draw Lotus Petal. And if he doesn't draw a Lotus Petal on the next turn, he has to play a land. And, okay, well, you make the decision for them. Sometimes, your decisions are made for you. He needs to just draw gas now.
And I think that was correct from Sock. He could have got greedy and said, oh, well, for Branden to get out of this, he's going to have to sack his City of Traders. So the City of Traders will die anyway, so I don't need to wasteland it. But the world in which he top decks Lotus Petal, plays Sneak Attack, and then
you're now locked into the fact that something could come down at any point in time. And there's the Emrakul,
So definitely. So I think it was correct to wasteland for sure.
Yeah. It's correct to wasteland. It's just not correct to leave 4 wastelands in Socrates. But the wasteland was very good there.
You got lucky.
We're very brutal when commentating when it comes to Brainstorm and Wasteland. The two legacy icons.
Hindsight is 2020. Sometimes instinct and the correct play are 2 different things. Often it is, but I think that's why you practice to turn your instinct into the correct play.
Yes,
that's what I believe.
like that
because you will not have time if you have to think about and do the maths with every play. Like we've done, we've analysed it. You don't have time to do that. I mean,
No.
with that Thoughtseize earlier on the spell piece, you don't have time to sit there and think every single land drop, every single fetch. You do need to trust your instincts. But if you want to get those instincts correct, you need to practice. And that's what it is, I think.
I liked your comment there, turn your instinct into the correct play. I think we should do a legacy podcast and have a section on it talking about, with a slogan, Legacy, turn your instinct into the correct play. And it's all about practicing how to brainstorm correctly, when to use Wasteland, when to side Wasteland out, and
Sounds
when
like
to...
a promotional thing.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. Tell us in the comments if you like that idea.
Turn your instinct into the correct play with Legacy.
Narrated by Batman.
I mean, it works with every format as well. As you get a bit more complicated, I think Vintage and Legacy Vintage and Highlander gets a bit more complicated. You can't really, there's so many options to play around. But in Legacy, the deck lists are all pretty similar, and if they're not, then you can play around those differences. And I think Legacy is very, very instinctual and just knowing the format.
Yeah, and here you can see Branden making the correct play of keeping an open fetch land whilst he's got Brainstorm in hand. The issue, though, is that he fetched out earlier a Volcanic Island, and if you think of the ways that you can possibly lose, you can lose to another Wasteland, even though you shouldn't expect your opponent to have Wastelands in against you. But anyway, you can definitely lose to another Wasteland here, and fetching a basic island there would have been a lot better. It allows you to have that protection against Wasteland, and now he brainstormed, he put 2 cards back, the 2 best cards, to hold them, and now he's getting himmed for 2 random cards, which are obviously going to be the 2 bad ones. There's probably 2 Emrakuls. There's 1 Emrakul.
Yeah.
If he hits a second Emrakul, that's great. You don't want them. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Wasn't it supposed to be the other card because 2, 4, 6? Or who knows how they did it? Anyway, I think any cards there are good. Him was always going to be good there.
The issue there is obviously here's an issue. You brainstorm to hide cards from him to Turak, right? But if they hit Emrakul,
wow,
then you shuffle away those good cards.
Wow.
So there's this kind of position where you go, well, maybe I don't want to brainstorm.
That is interesting, actually. You just hope they don't take your brainstorm.
And you hope they don't hit the Emrakul.
Or you don't brainstorm and you hope they don't hit brainstorm off the
Yes.
But him was always going to be brutal there, even if it just hits 2 lands. Because right now Branden needs lands to play Sneak Attack.
You're on a mulligan. You have been blown out by Surgical Extraction taking your powerful combo piece. You've been wastelanded out of one of your soul lands, and you've lost a Lotus Petal, so you're so far down that him just wrecks you.
Sock doesn't have a threat out, which he really wants, but at this stage he just needs to play Magic, and he'll be, as long as his hand is good and he's got spells to cast, it's always going to be relevant. Yeah,
his hand was actually really bad. We saw it before. It was like a bunch of lands. A bunch of lands, and he needed the Delver, but he had to pitch the Delver to Force of Will. So it was actually, that Force of Will was very costly, but he had to make it.
Well, I mean, it was amazing in the end because of the surgical.
Yes.
But yeah, as I said, I think Sock needs to... it looks like he is because he's fetched, but
he's about
he
to
needs
deploy
to
something.
Play like Tombstalker here or something. Anything. That's fine. That'll do. Okay. It's not the best.
It's a threat.
It'll do.
A threat's a threat. And Tarmogoyf?
Okay.
Tarmogoyf, there we go.
Right.
Now it's pretty much the clock's on the board, and Branden's going to be very hard pressed to get back in the game, but he can. A sneak attack... it can get you there.
Branden just looking underneath that ponder there, a Preordain in his graveyard, making sure, it was definitely Show and Tell that was exiled.
Yes.
I sure do need a sneak attack to win.
All right, so this is a desperation brainstorm. You don't need to do it here because, yes, you do have 2 fetch lands, but what you want to do here is just pass a turn because the clock of Tarmogoyf and Deathrite Shaman is basically 5 a turn, so you can actually let them hit you 2 times.
And the other thing is you need a bit more of a mass of cards in your hand to then start shaping it because you got to put 2 cards back. So you can only keep a maximum of how many cards he's got in hand? 3?
Yeah, 3.
And he can't really get there off the 3 cards. So he might as well wait a couple turns, draw, and now that he's got a hand of 5 perhaps, then he brainstorms, and now he's got the 5 cards that are really good, and he gets to pitch the really bad cards. Because you brainstorm now, and you're like, oh, well, I need lands, and I need Sneak Attack, and I need Emrakul, so what do you put back?
Yeah.
But once you start drawing, you go, oh, well, I've top decked 2 Emrakuls. So I can put one of the Emrakuls back.
Why is Socrates brainstorming here?
Uh,
Socrates, comment below. Why did you brainstorm here? You're so far ahead. Don't brainstorm, because what happens if your opponent draws sneak attack, plays sneak attack next turn, and threatens the possibility of an Emrakul? That's when you might maybe possibly want to actually have something to
I
deal
guess
with
he
it.
just wants to brainstorm into a threat to make the clock faster. But it seems desperate, and it's like you say,
unnecessary.
you know, is this a desperate time?
Yeah.
It's a scary time because Brendan, you know, in Sock's opinion, Brendan doesn't deserve this game because Sock's been so far ahead, and there is a chance he could lose. But you really got to look at those chances.
And
what
to
are
me,
the
I mean,
percentages?
Branden deserves this game, given that he's very carefully been trying to make sneak attack is out. He knows sneak attacks is out, so he's being very careful and trying to get there. And the single card in his hand, I believe, is sneak attack because it wasn't hit off the him to Turak.
Well, if he plays sneak attack, you know, here or waits for perhaps days, I reckon is probably more correct. Maybe one more turn and then you can play around days and potentially even get a...
You can play around it here.
Pierce.
You can just cast the sneak attack and keep the Lotus Petal, make him daze, make you use a Lotus Petal, then go to your next turn and then...
Oh, I didn't realise he'd brainstormed end of turn. I thought he was doing it in his turn. But he's not. He clearly doesn't have it because I probably would have jammed it there.
Was that an end of turn brainstorm?
I think it was an end of turn brainstorm.
You don't need to.
But that's why I got confused.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, you just assume people play brainstorm, you know, with thinking about the most possible value.
Sarv is getting brutal.
I'm savage
Brutal
when it comes to
today,
brainstorm.
folks.
We've got 4 in the format. Doesn't mean you can waste them.
Preordain is fine, I guess, but the clock's really on,
I mean,
isn't it?
it's lethal on board now.
Yeah. Here we go. Sneak attack, Grizzlebrand.
You'd need sneak attack, Lotus Petal, Grizzlebrand, or sneak attack, land, Grizzlebrand.
There we go.
Sneak attack, land, Emrakul would get you there.
Hope Sock forgets to drain with Deaththreat Shaman as he's out, I think.
If in doubt, target your own graveyard to make sure they don't have some shenanigans.
Or some kind
It's
of
not the dig through time era.
Yeah, there's no more dig through time anymore.
But remember, in the dig through time era, we were constantly exiling our own spells to drain them because of the odds that someone delves in response.
Right. I haven't seen a Tombstalker today.
No. He only has 1, is that right?
I think he's only got 1.
Yeah. The Tarmogoyfs have been doing work, though.
They're fine.
Yeah. The Tarmogoyf's a bit of an outdated card nowadays. I mean, you know, as much as we say Tarmogoyf's the best 2-drop, the problem is there are better...
3 drops even.
Yeah, better 3 and 1 drops than Tarmogoyf. Like Gurmag Angler's a 1-drop, and it's better than Tarmogoyf. And
he's still really good and scary.
He's good.
With
He's just
push out as well, I think, and a lot more creature decks.
So he actually put back the sneak attack in that time when the Emrakul shuffled.
And there's Blood Moon.
And you can see how bad that Blood Moon is. But obviously, you know, Branden played it well to try and make sure that he had an out and he works towards it, which obviously was the sneak attack. But, you know, that's this is how the games go. And it was a long, grindy game, and it was very interesting.
Yeah.
As much as we bantered, it was very interesting.
It was a really good matchup, yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. We're Adelaide Eternal. I'm Beckett Wolfe, and that's Sarven McLinton, and we've got another round to go.
See you in the last round.